Reproducibility, the cornerstone of open science. My name is Juuso Repo. I'm a senior researcher at the Invest flagship research center in Turku University. And reproducibility, workflow, and R can be quite overwhelming. And at least for me, when I started 5 years ago working with open science, I found that there's quite a lot of learning curve if you don't have a coding background. So in this presentation, I'm gonna walk you through the first steps or the baby steps in producing your first reproducible workflow in R. So I'm gonna first tell you what it is and then show you the four steps, introduce them, and then thereafter we can go into my laptop and I will show you hands-on demo in RStudio how you can make it and share some code in the additional material. So my guiding principle is that if you want to share, you need to know how to keep things private. So I will also share my learnings on how to make this easily possible. Reproducibility refers to the extent to which the methods, findings, and conclusions of a study can be independently repeated. So you can start with the publication and then share your code or your data. But if you link the code and data so that someone else can run your code with your data and you are able to publish them both, you give access someone else to repeat your study. But reproducibility means also that someone else can repeat your procedures or methods with a different set of data or within some other context. So it's really the cornerstone of transparency, and the key thing is to start, when you start your research process, you start documenting what you did with your data. And with RStudio and R, that is an open science framework with which you can accomplish these objectives. So why would you do that? So first of all, it helps you to keep your work organized. So research process is always messy and it's always non-linear. So these guidelines and these principles will keep you organized and will minimize your mistakes. So you don't need to copy and paste from a program to another when you are preparing your tables or figures, for example. You avoid mistakes like that. So of course you will save also time when your supervisor, co-author kindly wants you to update your analysis. You don't have to start from the scratch, because if you just change something in your code, then you can run it again. And of course, it also facilitates sharing and collaboration because you can start sharing already when during your project, not only just in the end. And the main point behind, of course, is the transparency and the better quality of science. So there's a lot of science practices which can be called open science practices, which are getting more and more typical and also demanding for researchers and reviewers. For example, these online repositories have made it possible to share the data, to share the code, and also a lot of extensive supplementary materials. And all this is actually a challenge, but also an opportunity for transparency. For example, with supplementary materials, you can really show the very detailed the steps you've done with producing your publication. So these methods have been there for a while, but nowadays with open science and computational tools, we can make the science even better, even more transparent than before. So there are a few papers studying open science practices which have shown that the field is not progressing with light speed. For example, one paper tried to reproduce 14 papers, all of which have had an open science batch, and only one was deemed fully reproducible. So it's really quite a challenge and quite complicated issue, and that's why I think that we should really understand the basics first and then progress with that. Before I get to the steps, I will share some principles that have helped me in this journey. So let's accept that the research process is messy and it's non-linear. So we have to plan our workflow in a way that allows that messiness. And we need to separate what we share and what we keep to ourselves. And then we can have components that we share along the way, so that we will not end up like in the end of the project with a full mess of files and folders, and we don't yet remember like how did we work with the data, and then that's a huge work in the end to make the project reproducible. So that's why a few simple steps, and these are the 4 steps. Baby steps for reproducible workflow in R. So first of all, we have to have a project which has a organized folder structure and includes all the files related to the project. Then we can run analysis with R code and R notebooks and generate reproducible outputs, so tables and figures with our code. And then along the way and before sharing, we have to make sure that our code and data are easily readable and commented enough for public sharing. And then as a final step, of course, we want to share our project, so there are online repos that are used for that. So we will go through these 4 steps, first with my presentation and then hands-on in RStudio. But first I want to say that of course it's a way more complicated area, and what we are not covering here is how you create tables and figures in APA style. So you can also write the full manuscript in RStudio. So include the R code and your text together. So then you can do like one button reproducibility, which means that from raw data you can automatically produce the final paper. And then few more important dimensions are dependency management, so that you can have an environment set up so that anyone with a different environment can also run your code. And then version control and licensing are some issues that we are not discussing in this demo. But you can see the description below. There are some links for learning these more advanced topics. Okay, step 1, project in RStudio, and then we will create project folders. So it's quite a simple thing, but often too messy. So agree these with yourself and with your team, and your life will be easier. Well, here, first of all project files in one place, so one project folder. Then the subfolders, the next level, I recommend you to start with the number, so your folders will always be in the same order. And then dedicated folders for sharing. So for example, you will have the data folder, And maybe good practice is to have the raw data separated and then your processed data in another subfolder. So then you can always reproduce the process from raw data to your processed data files. Then you have the folder scripts, which is the code or R. That is something that you want to share in public. And then the third folder is notebooks. I will get into that, but that is where the mess can live and prosper. So that's your own notebook for running the analysis. Then you have folder for output, so you can have different subfolders for tables and figures. So these are the outputs that you can reproduce with your code again and again when you do changes. And then few quite useful folders are the quick share folder. So if you want to share with your colleagues, you can just instead of saving a copy with a different name, you can just save a copy in the quick share folder and then share that file to your co-authors, for example, for commenting or something like that. And then archive is a good folder to have, so you can put all the things that you are not brave enough to delete yet, so you can have your archive folder. So these are useful tips for any file management. So that was step 1. Step 2, run your analysis. Of course, there are many ways to work in RStudio and R, but I have found this useful. So you run your analysis in notebooks, which means that that's a file which combines your code, your results, and notes all in one file. And that's ideal for working through the analysis and sharing your preliminary results with your co-authors, for example. And then you have separately the R files, which are the script files, plain text files, that contains only the code and the necessary comments, so that an independent outside person can understand your code. So that is neat for public sharing, and I will show you in my demo that how can you extract the R code from your notebook, so you can decide which part of your notebook you want to include in the publicly shareable files. And then you will have processes like you have the raw data in a CSV or some data file, and then you have the R code, for example, prepare data, and then you get your processed data in your processed data folder. So you build these kind of processes. You have the processed data, then you run the descriptive analysis. First you do them in notebook, and then you have the final descript R file, and that code produces your figure. So this is the idea of your workflow with your files in the project folder. Yes, and step 3, prepare your code and data for sharing. So of course you have to think of maybe you have copied some code from somewhere else, or you build your code yourself, but you have to think that it's reproducible and understandable for other people. So you can include comments, but also README files and regarding the data, the code boot, and other metadata files. So include these in your project folder. And good general guidelines for documentation is that what is standard does not have to be documented, what is easy needs only little documentation, and what is consistent only has to be documented once. Of course, documentation and the depth depends on your project a lot. One assistant is ChatGPT, so if you have code that you don't have comments with or you don't understand, you can always use the very effective prompt, explain this code. And ChatGPT or some other AI may help you in making your code understandable. Once that's done, you can proceed to the fourth step, which is publishing your project in an online repo. So these repos, online services, are made for uploading, sharing, and accessing academic projects, code, data, and papers. So there are many different options. I will show you in the demo how to use the Open Science Framework, OSF. But of course, depending on your discipline, you can maybe ask your co-authors or colleagues what is mostly used in your field. And then with these repos, you can get a digital object identifier, which is a permanent link to your project or your paper as well. So then you can enhance the discoverability and citability of your work. While this, even though this is the fourth and the final step, you can use these repos along your project, so along the full process cycle, and these will help you also with updating and updating your project and files and sharing them during the project. So that was it for steps. Next we will go forward to the hands-on demo in RStudio. So we will go through these 4 steps and also some additional tricks that I find very useful in organizing the project. Of course, if you want to do it yourself, you need R and RStudio installed. You can find the link in description below how to do that, and I will not go through the basics of R and RStudio. So if you are not familiar at all, maybe get to know them a bit, the environment before continuing from this. Okay. Now, next, let's go to my laptop and look how to make these steps live, how to make your first reproducible workflow in R.